Why must we have this reverse idea of supremacy in order to make ourselves feel better about our ancestors? Instead of recognizing that culture that happened in the past may not match our morality of today. This person says, Dennis says that your story is wrong. Africans who participated in the trade were given no choice. Either they participated or got sold as slaves. You are quoting the story of the conquerors. Our bid to find pride in our history can sometimes blind us to reality. Instead of realizing that not all of our ancestors were great, not all of them were great as we would compare them today. I don't understand why it is so difficult for a person to realize that slavery has been a part of human culture longer than it has been considered immoral. Think about that. Slavery has been documented through all human cultures for thousands and thousands of years. As far back as 12,000 years ago, we humans have thought that slavery in one form or fashion is okay, is part of the culture. They didn't think anything was wrong with it. They thought it was a natural progression. Even Aristotle wrote, Aristotle, I'm not saying he's like he's so special, but Aristotle, which formulated a large portion of the European Christian mindset concerning slavery, um, said that it is a natural position of man to be master and slave, and pretty much quoted said the same thing that Lincoln said, that if it's his preference, that his people will be the masters and not the slaves. That mentality got interrupted, so I lost my train of thought for a second. But it's been part of the culture longer. Oh, Aristotle, then Lincoln, and saying that they rather be the ones in charge. Okay, that formulated heavily on the mindset of the European when they started their explorations, so-called their colonization. But when they originally began trading with West Africans, it was a mutually agreed upon thing. It wasn't something that they were forcing. Uh, African nations had wars just like European nations, just like the Arab nations had wars. Those who lost in the wars were captured and generally brought into slavery or forced to be conscripts in their military. When two rival nations saw that it was more of a stalemate and they were having difficulty, and here comes these Europeans with more advanced weaponry. Of course, trading slaves for the more advanced weaponry, trading slaves for other products was a normal thing to do. It wasn't until Pope Eugenius that things really started changing around 1435. And then definitely under Pope Nicholas IV in 1453, I believe, that it was mandated as a Christian crusade to snatch and take slaves. And once the Europeans started realizing that it's actually cheaper, economically cheaper, to take slaves, then your statement becomes more valid. Then it becomes more valid. When they were able to start having ports and cities in West Africa, then your statement becomes more valid. But prior to that, the slavery in Africa was not something that Europeans forced upon them. So you have to recognize that just like every group, every people group that exists today, you have to take the good with the bad. But it's not, you don't have to take it in the same light, because we recognize, I forgot the term that it's called, when you take your morality of today and imprint it on the people in the past. If you do that, you will always find yourself looking at your past, at your ancestors, in the most negative way, and then try to reconcile some methodology that you can validate their past. But the truth is, they were living according to the culture that they developed themselves and grew up in the same way that you live in the culture today that you were born into. 1,000 years from now, there are things that we do that your progeny will say we were dead wrong, and we were doing it thinking that we are correct in how we are existing. But your progeny, my progeny will say that we are wrong. And there's no way for you right now to know what that is going to be for the most part. So just accept the fact that in their culture, that was normal. Very, 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 very normal. Um, Even though we think today it was wrong. But our ancestors were not originally forced into selling other defeated tribes or nations into slavery. But hopefully, as always, you got to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is not negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.